What would give you cause for concern? What would you see here that would
if this came back, just talking about the microbiology, Michelle, if this came back with, a couple of 100 to 300 count total coliforms and, 10 or more or more than 0 E. coli together, it'd be saying to you, there's a few things I have to sort out here. It wouldn't be a major concern, but it'd indicate you need to, this is commissioning, right? Maybe you need to wait a day or two more for your system to settle down before you're actually using it in your house. If you've got a filter on your drinking water tap in your rainwater design, say like in my house, a 0.1 micron filter, this is not going to be a concern.
What's not going to be a concern? The bacteria.
These low counts of bacteria, if you've got them before the drinking water tap in your kitchen, say you got them from an outdoor tap or something like that. But if you have significant counts in both total coliform and E. coli, then you'd be saying, I need to take a more careful look at this. And if you've just commissioned, what I've found for projects I've worked on, it's because the system hasn't settled down yet and corrected itself. So sometimes you're waiting a while before you start using the water for all of the uses you want to. When your E. coli result from your drinking water tap ends up being around 0, it's a pretty reliable result from the microbiology perspective, and it's saying your treatment train's okay. This may not happen within the first 24 to 48 hours of setting up your system. You need to let it settle. The other results in this set of tests here are very low for chemicals and metals. Those results, you're looking through them, they're very low numbers for the physical, chemical and metals. pH is fine. Actually surprisingly low numbers for rainwater. And this is looking very good. So I don't know what treatment train these people have got in place, but it seems to be working nicely. And frankly, the microbiology numbers are low. If you're getting into this even more than that, down the bottom they have the sum of ketones and sum of ions and anions, and they have a total count of particles in the water. Those numbers are our 1s and 0s, extremely low. So that water is very clean. Not that you'd be bothering too much with that one. And very interesting in rainwater harvesting systems, if the metals and physical, chemical parameters are quite low, it's more likely than not your microbiology counts will be low as well.
What about total dissolved solids? What is that actually telling you? And is that anything useful again?
I think total dissolved solids, which is a contested measure, depending on who's measuring it, is similar to my suggestion about heterotrophic plate counts as a general microbial measure. It's giving you a measure of the general quality of the water. I think it's actually a really good measure. Like this count of 61 was saying, I could know already just by looking at this that if you looked inside this guy's rainwater storage, the water would be clear, and from the other counts here, it won't be smelling either. So, I think total dissolved solids is actually a really nice measure. you know, sometimes people measure turbidity, but you don't need to measure both, because both of them are really giving you a feel of how clear the water is. And here's something we used to talk about in the laboratory. The human eye is far better than laboratory apparatus to detect whether or not something is clear. So,
so after all of this discussion, again, it's really interesting to read the EN Health document, the Australian rainwater tank or rainwater guidelines, and read right in there that they actually don't recommend. How do they state it? You might know better than I, but unless you have cause for concern, I think the statement is it just causes a lot of confusion typically.
That is basically what they've said. They've said it in medico language, but I think they say that unless there's a genuine cause for concern, this type of laboratory testing is counterproductive because it creates confusion.
And in fact, I think I even read, I might be going back into my memory here, that at one point they said if you did really have cause for concern, you could actually just do something to your tank versus test for it, right? Just even, I think the recommendation might even be like a little bit of chlorine or something like that in your tank. I could be wrong, but I kind of remember something to that effect.
A series of recommendations that are quite different to what we see in other parts of the world. The first one is check to see if your water smells and is clear, which I've said a number of times. It's still the best way to check. If it's not quite right, check the physical setup of your rainwater harvesting system. Why isn't it quite right? Maybe you don't have a screen on the inlet to your storage. Maybe you need a leaf diverter because you're letting debris into your storage. So it basically says to go and check those practical common sense things and correct them, rather than go off and just do all these tests, which aren't going to be really helpful. Just last week in the Australian guidelines, which will ultimately end up in the EN Health guidelines that are due for a rewrite, we've withdrawn support of homeowners using chlorine in rainwater storages because chlorine is a poison. So in the past, used to have these legacy things. Are you worried about mosquitoes? Just put some kerosene in the top of your storage. No, we don't recommend that anymore because it used to sit on the water surface layer that I talked about in a previous lesson. Oh, you're worried that your rainwater mightn't be too good? Just throw some chlorine in, it'll be fine. It's now realised that both of these elements are quite poisonous to humans, and they were very bad advice. So the latest standards in Australia actually do not recommend people put chlorine in rainwater storages, which we'll talk about a little later in the course, I think, but I'll foreshadow it now. It's more a management approach of almost a process of, okay, so you've got a dead animal in your tank. These are the steps you would go through in this case. Or, okay, you're commissioning your rainwater harvesting system. These are the steps you would go through. Or, okay, you didn't quite get the right treatment train in place, so you got suspended material that won't go away in your water body. These are the steps you take. So the way
like a troubleshooting and action guide, right?
Yeah, which we're going to do, aren't we, Michelle?
Yeah, we are. Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter. That was super informative.
Thank you, Michelle.